black cat, ubiquitous in tales of black magic and witches, often serving as a familiar to the practitioners of the dark arts. The domain of dread has these creatures in abundance. Lesser known, however, is a creature that shares in its form, if not its function. More deadly and less subservient is the unfamiliar. Preying on those who have started on the path to the dark side, the unfamiliar will provide great boons and benefits to you. However, most of its victims will never suspect their helpful new pet of pushing them along the winding path of evil until it is far too late for them to turn back. Once the unfamiliar gets its claws into you, the line between master and servant will dissolve, leaving you to wonder if you were ever in control in the first place. Appearing in the second edition supplement Children of the Night, the Ghost Cat was just one of the many creatures featured that built off of what came before it in Van Richten's Guides to Ghosts. Separating this supplement from the other monstrous compendiums is that it contained both a stat block and description, as well as a short adventure for each named monster. In fact, I could sit here and rattle off a bunch of stats and abilities and why you should be terrified of this creature in game. But I think the best way to do it was with a good old-fashioned story. And for this particular story, I have taken the adventure Expiation that is included with the Ghost Cat and turned it into a loose narrative adaptation. I've taken some of the liberties and changed some of the things, as any good DMs want to do. I've also left off a good bit of the ending to avoid spoilers. This is a cautionary tale. One mistake, one untimely misstep, and you never know who will take notice, or where that witness will lead you next. The night was foggy outside of Mordenshire. Bryn and Trevathan were in trouble. Bryn had not set out to kill this night, but a botched robbery of herbal supplies bound for Dr. Van Richten had left blood on his hands and a stain on his soul. His lack of remorse was almost as unexpected as his new sense of power. Fleeing to a rocky cave in Arden Bay, the pair had no time to reflect on the night's horrors. On their tail were a group of pursuers, witnesses from the town meaning to bring them to justice. Closing in now, Trevathan pulled out his dagger and prepared to make a stand. Bryn searched desperately for a means of escape. Out of the corner of his eye, he spied some movement. A black cat on a small ledge, grooming itself. Pausing, it looks straight at him, and then jumps down and nuzzles against the wall. Bryn watched as it scratched a stone and disappeared right into the spot marked. Could he have blinked? Surely he must have imagined things. Short on time, he would investigate the stone, finding that it actually concealed an entrance to a secret room. Who built it, who put it there, it didn't matter at this point. At the last second, Bryn and Trevathan were able to slip in and close the secret door behind them. Their pursuers were quick to fill the cavern. Heavy footsteps sloshing in the waters of low tide were almost drowned out by the calls of, "There! Over there! I saw him run into this cave!" But the group would not find their marks. Bryn and Trevathan would remain hidden for the night. Sleeping as comfortably as one could while tucked away in a secret cavern, Bryn was awakened by something. While listening closely to the sounds of his partner sleeping, he could hear the unmistakable sound of purring coming from down by his feet. He would reach down to feel a bundle of warm fur exactly the same size and shape of a large cat. It purred even more loudly after being touched, giving a small lick to his hand, and Bryn, feeling somehow safe and secure, drifted gently back to sleep. At this point in the story, we can see the unfamiliar laying the trap for its new victim. The ghost cat will be drawn to a PC who has recently committed a vile act. In the case of this story, it is Bryn's recent act of murder. Appearing only to its target, it will offer its services, be a helpful new friend. But as we shall see, its help will come with a hefty price. The pair would leave in the morning. Bryn's new accomplice was nowhere to be seen. He Must have sneaked away in the night, he thought. Concealing themselves as best as possible, the pair would make their way back to Mordenshire to try to offload their ill-gotten gains. Procuring a room at the Bleached Mermaid Inn and blending in with the sailors from a newly docked vessel, the pair decided to lay low for a while. For the next 2 days, off in the distance, wherever Bryn looked, there would be that cat, just sitting there, watching, his stare ever falling upon Bryn. And every night when he went to sleep, somehow his furry friend would find a way into his room and take up residence right at his feet, purring and giving comfort to his new friend. Trevathan would claim to have never seen him. It didn't matter. Bryn was just getting used to having it around. On the third day, tired of laying low and growing ever restless, the pair decided to head to the ruined chapel on the outskirts of town. Finding anything left there worth plundering was a long shot to be sure, but one can only sit still for so long. And wouldn't you know it, there digging in the falling leaves off the trail up ahead on their way was the cat. Meowing to Bryn in a voice that it seemed only he could hear, trying desperately to get his attention. Bryn ran to the spot where it was digging, Trevathan following close behind, but confused at his friend's urgency. As they approached, the cat took off, leaving only the disturbed ground for them to find. Pushing aside the decaying leaves and dirt, Bryn could see the familiar white shape of human bone. Taking the next few minutes to dig the soil out from around it, they would find it was the skeleton of a human. Clothes almost completely decayed to nothing, his equipment long gone. However, Bryn would find a ring still clutched in the hand of the fallen man. Surely this was something of great importance. This couldn't be a normal ring. He would keep it for himself, not saying anything of the find to his partner. After all, it was his cat that had led him there. Trevathan didn't even believe it existed, calling him a figment of his imagination. Well, no, he wasn't, and it didn't matter what he thought, because now their friendship was paying dividends.
Just like every season has a turn, so does every good story. Up until now, we have seen the benefits that the unfamiliar has granted Bryn. But dead claws, they dig deep, and nothing is given without a price. And that price may be more than he is willing to pay.
Under the cover of night, they reached what was left of the temple. The moonlit sky, the only illumination entering the ruins. Bryn was startled to hear the sound of excited squeaking. It seemed that his cat friend had gone ahead and caught a field mouse. As cats do, it was toying with it. It gave the toy a little smack, sent it tumbling towards Bryn's feet. Righting itself, the little mouse's hands went up and motioned towards him and almost begged for mercy. The black cat form hunched down, getting ready for one final death pounce.
In a moment of uncontrolled mercy, the towering human bent down and shooed the mouse away behind his feet. At the same time, he swatted at the cat, connecting with his face, sending him careening back into the darkness.
A feeling of intense fear immediately swept over Bryn. The black mass hissed and snarled, lunging at him, claws cutting him clear across the forehead. He dropped immediately to his knees, feeling the intense need to atone. Trevathan came upon him in the middle of the act. He shook his friend out of his stupor, imploring him to get it together. At this point, Trevathan had had almost enough. Something was going on with his accomplice, and he no longer wanted any part of it. The talk of a cat that he couldn't see, the talking to himself, he was completely done. And he left him there and began the trip back to the town alone. As dangerous as that might have been, it seemed a better option at this point, and truthfully, he was probably right.
Bryn showing mercy to the little creature is something that cannot stand. It would be the same as a bloodhound smacking the bow out of the hand of a ranger as he's about to bring down his prey. The new master marking his servant with a cut on the head is more than just a physical reminder that obedience is expected. It's a mark that will seal his fate.
Alone and mentally exhausted, Bryn collapsed once again into a deep sleep. Only this time, the restful slumber that he had come to expect had eluded him, replaced by horrible nightmares. He was small, as small as the mouse he had shown kindness to, while in front of him, the cat had grown to the size of a giant panther. His pet began to stalk him tirelessly, its hot breath cascading down his neck, expecting any moment to feel the sink of its teeth into his flesh. But no, he escapes, or so he thinks. Turning a corner into the darkness, he would be greeted by the face of his pursuer, toying with him as he once did with the little mouse. Again and again, the scene plays out till one time he rounds the corner of the maze to see a man standing there, the one he recognizes as Dr. Van Richten. The doctor opens up his mouth.
Fool! What were you thinking playing with fire like that? Send it away before it's too late.
Stifling the doctor's words, the cat pounces, tearing at the flesh of the old man, ripping him limb from limb. Horrified, Bryn cannot look away. The beast then turns to him.
Claws and teeth dripping with blood. An unfamiliar voice says, followed by another and another. The crescendo of voices rises up and the stalker closes in on him until the scene fades away and he wakes up in a cold, cold sweat. The purring cat, the only sound, staring, unblinking, into his eyes. In the morning, Bryn would make his way back to Mordenshire, but something had changed. For the next week, the people of the town would recoil when talking to him. Business owners would refuse his patronage. People would begin to cross to the other side of the street if they saw him coming. He was becoming a sort of pariah. Surely, they didn't know what he had done. They hadn't pegged him before for any types of crime, so this made no sense. Every night when he would go to sleep, though, the cat would be there with him, and again, the same nightmares. He knew at this point what the creature wanted from him. He knew what he had to do. He would have to pay a visit to the old man from his dreams. Outside of the Van Richten's herbalist shop, he would stand for what seemed like an eternity. He could see the cat curled up in the eaves above the entrance, just waiting for him to approach. Then he felt something he wasn't expecting, a yank on his shoulder. Spinning around, he saw the same group of men who had chased him the first night in Mordenshire. Taking up arms and brandishing rope and irons, these men admonished Bryn for his sins and began to advance on him, and then they stopped in their tracks as if some supernatural force had placed a wall of horror around their target, an unholy force that the men dare not penetrate. Dropping their weapons, the men turned and retreated, refusing to advance any further. The old man's words echoed in his head. He has been marked already. The scratch. Stained fingers moved up to touch the spot on his forehead where the creature had staked its claim. A sigh of resignation fell from his lips. He belonged to it now. Having been gifted so much, what it asked in return really didn't seem all that unreasonable. He had killed before, and he kind of liked it. Forsaken hands clenched the hood, and up over his head it went. With measured steps, he approached the shop and placed his open palm on the door. All the while, his new partner, his unfamiliar, looked on from his perch and purred.
The sole purpose of the ghost cat is to get its hooks into a person and corrupt them completely. Once a person commits an evil act in Ravenloft, it is possible that it will draw the attention of the unfamiliar. It will offer boons and blessings, all the while making the person more and more dependent on it, driving it further down the path to darkness. To ensure a person does not fall prey to many of the threats of the demiplane, once a creature is marked, usually by an unobtrusive scar, even undead creatures will recoil in horror from that person, rather than face the unfamiliar's wrath. It's said that even Dark Lords themselves will abandon the attacks against the targets, preferring to instead relish the fact that somebody else is as doomed as they are. It's the reason that the people at first will welcome the presence of the ghost cat, not realizing its gifts are going to come with a hefty price. The cat can only be seen by the person it targets, but it will behave to them like a normal cat, sitting on its lap, purring, but as time goes on, it will spend more time just staring at its master as if it were his prey, slowly driving the target to act out of desperation as he or she realizes how little control they actually have. Once marked, even normal people the person interacts with will sense an aura of evil around the target, to the point that he will be alienated from almost everyone he comes into contact with, leaving the cat as its only friend. The mark still has free will. The cat can't make him do what he wants, only create circumstances where it is preferable to atoning for their sins. Even in our story, Bryn still had a choice, but it was a tough one that could have led to his death. Whenever the victim acts in a way that's contrary to the cat's wishes, he could scratch him or bite him. Doing so causes the same amount of damage a normal creature would do. However, the wounds are resistant to magic, and healing only happens at 1/30th the rate of normal, meaning it would take 30 points of healing to produce 1 hit point of recovery. Given enough time, this could lead to a death by 1,000 cuts situation. The ghost cat also has its own set of defenses. It cannot be turned, shows no aversion to holy symbols or water, and can accompany its victims into holy sites with no sign of distress, although it will be quite agitated if the victim is there for the purposes of expiation. The only thing that will work on the unfamiliar is an atonement spell. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the cat isn't the only form this unfamiliar can take. It can in fact be any type of small creature, so be wary. The next time Fido comes bringing you some bone he found out on a walk, Fido may be no mo. I'll leave you today in the words on the subject from the author Edgar Allan Poe. I highly recommend you listen to his poem, The Black Cat, which was obviously the inspiration for the creature in Ravenloft. I will link it in the description. He sums the relationship up thusly.
With my aversion to this cat growing, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. Neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest anymore. I started from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and in its vast weight an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent, eternal, upon my black heart.
Thank you again so very much for watching this video. If you like what we're doing here, the longer form lore videos, please consider liking and subscribing and sharing them out whenever possible. I cannot tell you how much that means to me. So thank you all very much for watching today. Please like and subscribe, share this out to your friends, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. In the game of life, may you always roll with advantage.
Everyone you know is an asshole. When everyone you know is a cat. And cats are just like dogs, except they're assholes. And every dog agrees it's just like that.